Alright, whether you're planning a trip around the country or you just want to learn how to animate lines, stick around and I'll show you how to make something just like this. Let's hop into After Effects and we'll create a new project. Alright, so let's create a new composition by hitting the New Comp button right here. We'll go ahead and choose the preset HD 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames a second. And don't worry too much about the duration because we'll go ahead and shorten that up at the end. For now, I'll set mine to 30, but anything around 10 seconds should be fine. And we'll click OK. Here, I'm going to go ahead and just import a map of the United States. So here's our map of the US, and we'll end up extending that just a little bit. You can download this same map from nationalatlas.gov. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and scale this up a little bit. I'm just going to hit the S key, and we'll scale it up to try to get those borders off the frame. If we can't do that, I'll show you a little trick that we can use to just clean up these edges. For now, let's put our map on the screen, and since we're going to be drawing on top of this, let's go ahead and lock it just to make sure we don't accidentally grab it when we are adjusting our lines. So I'll come down here to the Layers tab, and I will click the lock icon for this map right here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is get out our pen tool and create a path. So we'll go ahead and select the pen tool. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn the fill off. So I'll click on the word fill, I'll hit the none button and click OK. And then I'll come over to my stroke and I'll click the fill on and click OK. And then I'll make sure it's right about 17. So at this point I am ready to draw my path. So I'm going to hit Command plus to zoom in. And we'll start down here in Southern California and we'll work our way up the coast. Now, if you've never used the pen tool, it can be a little bit tricky. And the advice I would give you right off the bat is if you want smooth curves, go ahead and just click and keep pulling as you click. Hold the mouse down and you'll see you get a Bezier handle. And if you click and kind of turn, you can see that it affects the curve in a pretty specific way. This left side of it affects the beginning of the curve, and this right side of it will affect what I'm about to make. So I'll come down to Texas, we'll click, and we'll drag, and again, notice that as I drag, it adds curvature as I pull these handles out. And then we'll head up to the Great Lakes and do a quick little loop, and we'll come down here, make our way on up to the northeast, and come down the coast, and we'll make our way down to Florida. And we will end somewhere right about there. Okay, so as I hit Command minus, now looking at some of these curves, they look a little bumpy and they're not quite as smooth as I'd want them to be. So if you have any curves that you're not happy with, all you need to do at this point is come over and click on the selection tool. And that'll allow you to select these anchor points. Click on them and you'll see that you get your Bezier handle back. So if I want to make this more of a even circle, I can kind of pull this up a little bit. I can also shorten the Bezier arms and you can see that affects the curve. So I'll hold down the space bar, I'll drag over here. This one looks a little sharper than I want. So I'm going to again grab that point and just kind of pull it down here a little bit. Maybe put that one there and again just turn that handle. So again, feel free to tweak this as needed to fit your animation. For me, this looks just fine. But the one thing I don't like is the fact that we have these sharp edges at the end here. Now we're going to put an arrowhead on this side, but still, I think that would just look better if it was rounded off. So I'm going to go ahead and select my shape layer. I'm going to go over to my properties panel on the right, and where it says line cap, I'm going to change it to round cap. And you can see that just rounds that edge off, makes it look a little cleaner. All right, if I hit Command minus to zoom out here, we now have our path. And before I start to animate this, I'm going to go ahead and open up the contents for shape layer 1. In fact, let's go ahead and click on the word shape layer 1, hit return, and I'm just going to write red line so I know what I'm looking at. Then I'm going to open up the triangle for content. I'm going to do the same for shape. I'm going to open up the triangle for the word path, and I'm going to actually find the path with the stopwatch next to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, and I am going to hit Command C. That's going to copy that path so that I can apply it to the triangle that will become the arrowhead on my line. All right, so I've drawn my line, I've tweaked it, and I have copied the path. But before I make the arrowhead, let's go ahead and animate this path. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and choose the red line. We'll go down to where it says Contents and then go straight across to the Add menu. The Add menu is something that will allow us to add animation functionality to this shape. And the way I'm going to do that is by going down to Trim Paths. That adds the animation functionality of Trim Paths. And that's going to allow me to control the animation of this line onto the screen. So we'll open up the words Trim Paths, and you'll notice we have a start, end, and offset. Start controls the left side, so to speak. End controls the right side. And offset just changes where the start point is, as you can see there if I just click and drag. Now, I definitely want my offset at 0. I'm not even going to worry about the start value because I've already drawn this on, so I have my endpoint picked out. So what I'm going to do instead is just move the playhead to 6 seconds. I'm going to click the stopwatch for the end value, and then I'll drag the playhead back to about 2 or 3 seconds, whatever fits your needs. And then I'm just going to set the end value down to 0. And you can see that we're animating in reverse right now. But by doing that, by moving the playhead and changing the value, it gives us a keyframe. If I hit the space bar now, you can see that our line draws itself on. Cool, so the next thing we need to do is animate our arrowhead. And the first thing we want to make sure of is that we don't have the red line selected when we do this. Because if we do, it will add it to the contents of this shape layer. Instead, let's go ahead and click off, and we can draw on our triangle wherever we want, and we'll nudge it into place as needed. So I'm going to use the star tool. So if you go up to the rectangle tool and hold down the mouse, you'll see the star tool at the bottom. And we don't actually have a dedicated triangle tool, so the star tool is what we will use to make our arrow. Now, before I do this, I want to change my fill to on. Click OK. I'm going to go ahead and turn the stroke off by clicking on the word stroke and hitting the none button. And now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit by hitting Command plus, and I'll hold down the Shift key, click and drag, and you notice that I'm getting a triangle. If you are getting a star like this, just make sure to hold the mouse down, and as you click and drag, you can hit the down arrow, and that will reduce the number of points on your arrow. So again, drag it out, use the up arrow to add points, or the down arrow to remove points. All right, so for me, right about there should be good. The next thing I want to be sure of is that my anchor point is in the center. If your anchor point is not in the center, you can grab the anchor point tool, you can click on it and just hold down Command, and that lets it snap to the center. Or you can hit Command Option Home if you have a home button available on your keyboard, and that'll put it in the middle as well. One more step, if you go up to After Effects, Settings, General, you do have the option to turn on a setting that will keep your anchor point in the center all the time. As you can see right here, if you choose Center Anchor Point in New Shapes, you won't have that problem at all. So that's a good button to click right there. All right, so now that we have our triangle and our anchor point, what we want to do next is we'll go ahead and select the layer, hit the return key, type in arrow head, click off, and then I'm going to select the transform value, hit the P key for position, and I'm going to select position and then hit Command V to copy the path information onto that triangle. And you'll notice that it automatically animates it to that path. So if we hit the space bar, we'll see that we're kind of in the ballpark there. But you'll notice it's kind of off. And the reason that it's off is because if I select all of my layers by just clicking and dragging a little box over them, and I hit the U key, that's going to show me my keyframes. And the first thing I can tell is that my arrowhead animation is not as long as my line, and therefore it's getting there too early. All I need to do to fix that is select the last keyframe and drag it so that it is on top of my line keyframe. And now if we watch, let's go ahead and pull that over there so that the beginning keyframe matches up with the end keyframe. And now if we watch this again, you'll see that it follows pretty well. But you can also see that our arrowhead isn't really looking the way we want it to look. You can see it's kind of pointing in odd directions. That's an easy fix. All we have to do is select the arrowhead, right click, choose transform, and we'll go down to the bottom here where it says auto orient. And if I click that, that gives us the option to orient the arrowhead along the path. So let's go ahead and click that, click OK. And if I click off here, we can back it up, take a look again. All right, still just a little bit off, right? You can see it's pointed just a little bit away. That's not a problem at all. All we have to do to fix that is select the arrowhead, hit R for rotation, and just rotate it so that you're happy with it. For me, I think right about there looks good. Let's click off. Maybe just a touch more. All right, the arrowhead's looking a little bit better, but you know what? I do need to come in here and just tweak the anchor point slightly. So if we select the arrow and we can see the anchor point's just not quite where I want it, or we could just rotate it actually. Let's just go to rotation. And notice if I spin it this way, now it's pointing in the right direction a little better. And we can check it out one more time here. Back it up. There you go, that's looking a little better. Again, you can fine tune that arrowhead however much you need to. Now, we have this animation. Everything's looking pretty good. There's just a couple things we can do to make it even better. First thing we could do would be to ease all these keyframes. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, we do need to be careful about one thing. If I select all my layers and I hit the U key, you can see that we have additional keyframes on our arrowhead that we don't have on our red line. And each one of those individual keyframes is actually these anchor points. And we don't want to ease those, because if we do, it'll add a bunch of additional easing inside of this that isn't on our red line, and it'll throw it out of sync. So we can just hold the Shift key, select the first and last keyframe for both of these, and then we're going to hold down the FN F9 button, and that will ease the motion. If we watch it again, we can see that now it speeds up and eases to a stop. Now, since we're here, we can also go ahead and turn on motion blur for both of these layers. And to do that, we're going to have to switch from our modes to our switches, and I'll do that by going down to the bottom here and just making sure that I can see my switches. You may not have to do this step if you can already see these. I'm going to go ahead and click the one for motion blur, for the arrowhead, and for the red line. I'll make sure it's turned on for the whole project. Let's look at it one more time here. All right, now we're getting some motion blur on that arrowhead that looks nice. But I have one last issue that I want to fix, and that is the fact that this arrowhead is just sitting here the whole time. Now, I could either just trim that layer so it appears right as it starts moving, but I think it'd be a little more interesting to have it just scale up real quick. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and find that first keyframe for the arrowhead. I'm going to hit the S key to get the scale parameter. Now again, it's already at the size I want it to be at 3 seconds. So I'll go ahead and just click the stopwatch for 100%. And then I'll back it up about 8 frames. So not quite a half a second. And I'll drop the value down to 0 and hit return. And now our arrowhead will animate on and start moving. And there you go. So if that's what you needed to do, that's how you do it right there. I will take just a second now and show you a couple little tricks for the pen tool if you're interested. So let's say, we'll just pop open a new comp here. So here's a quick way that you can make nice curves if you're new to the pen tool. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my stroke to 17, turn my fill off, and I'm just going to click points like this. Now notice these are all linear, they're very angular, and they don't look all that great if you're looking for smooth curves. But under the pen tool, there's a tool called the Convert Vertex tool. And if I grab that tool and I just come over here and click on all these points, it automatically rounds them off. Because basically what it's doing is it's converting these from linear points to Bezier points. And we're getting a nice curve. Now you don't want to use this tool to modify these, it's not really what it's for, but you can definitely use it to go in and give you a relatively smooth path if you're new to the pen tool and this is what you need. Like I said before, if you want to modify these, the easiest way to do it is grab the selection tool. If the anchor point is hollow, like it is here, I can click right on it and I'll get a Bezier handle and I can come down here and modify these curves. All right, so just a little bit of additional help there with the pen tool for those of you who need it. Now, I also said if you need help removing these sidebars, an easy way to do that is to select the map, unlock it, and I'm going to just make sure it is selected. I'm going to grab the rectangle tool. As long as the map is selected, this tool is going to create a mask, and I'm just going to mask out those edges. Go to right about there. And that leaves me with the issue of having these columns on the end, which I do not want. So to fill those in, we'll just go up to Layer, New, Solid. And with this little eyedropper right here, I'm going to click in the water. Click OK. And notice it puts it on top, so I'm just going to grab that layer and drag it down to the bottom. And that looks a little bit better. Not perfect. Again, if we were really trying to get this solid here, I'd get rid of that partial island. So again, just click on the map. This time I'll grab the pen tool and I will just drag out a little selection. Close it. And as you can see, it's actually adding to the mask. So down here where it says mask number 2, I'm just going to switch that down to subtract. And there we go. Now, as I mentioned before, this comp is now too long. It doesn't need to be any longer than about 6 or 7 seconds. So what I'm going to do is hit the minus key. I'm going to come over and grab this little blue handle on this gray line and slide that to right about 8 seconds. I'm going to right click on this line and choose Trim Comp to Work Area. Because of this, I don't really worry about the duration of my projects when I'm opening a new comp. I usually try to leave it a little bit longer, knowing that I can always trim it down later. And there you go. So if we start right here, there's your animated line. All right, I'll see you in the next video.